everyone, this is Zach Edwards with another episode of the Adventure Box podcast brought to you by Historical Conquest. So, thank you. I am the CEO of Historical Conquest, little transparency. So, yes, they're sponsoring it, but we're putting this together for your enjoyment and for your learning. So, I hope you're actually enjoying these. We actually have a lot of fun putting these together, and we'll give you more as we go. And I'm hoping to actually have a better studio fairly soon. So look forward to that as well. And some better equipment for better sound, because we had a little issue where for some reason I turn on the microphone and slowly over time, like over days of recording, it drops its volume. Even though it looks like it stays the same, it slowly drops the volume and people can have a harder time hearing me. Okay, so let's get into what we're going to be talking about today. This is the Battle of Montreal. Last time I talked about the Battle of Quebec. This time we're going to be talking about Montreal. Now, Quebec is a little bit different. Quebec was all the troops, the 4,400 troops came through the St. Lawrence River to Quebec. Now, at this point, you have Quebec being taken over, and you have Montreal about to be taken over. So let's go over some of the things that happen. Okay, here we go. Starting off with April to May, so this is after Quebec has already fallen, 1760. You have the Battle of Saint Foy. I guess it's Saint Foy. It's basically led by Francois Gaston de Levis. So winning the Battle of Saint Foy near Quebec City. So this is outside of Montreal, and this is a French troop still fighting back against the British. Even though Quebec fell, Montreal to the French is going to stay solid. Here's the question though. After Quebec fell, you have to understand that a lot of the French, the soldiers at least, would basically be saying, what are we even doing this for? Why are we staying strong here when the way to get here through water is through the St. Lawrence River, which has been taken over with Quebec being taken over. You can't get past Quebec on the St. Lawrence River without being shot at by cannon fire and most likely sunk. So what are the French thinking? There's nothing they could do unless they're going to travel all of their furs, and actually I should have brought this up, all their furs from Montreal all the way back to the Atlantic Ocean. Now, there was another thing that people thought they might just do. Let me get this out here. Okay. So if you are looking at the YouTube channel, you'll see this map. If you're in the podcast, don't worry about it. I'm just showing a map of the United States. So, up here, Fort Louisbourg. This is where all the French were. I told you about this yesterday. This is the Gulf of the St. Lawrence River. This is the St. Lawrence River. Come down St. Lawrence River, you come to Quebec. Come down further, you get to Montreal. Now, what were the French going to do if they could not get their furs and other goods back to the Atlantic Ocean? They could not travel through the colonies. That would not make the British very happy. They could not get it up further north because you're just coming around more land and marching it over to the Atlantic Ocean. They're pretty much stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's nowhere to go. Quebec is taken. It's not going to be taken back anytime soon unless the French come with a huge amount of soldiers, and that wasn't happening because of what's happening over in Europe still. They're still battling out there. They're still going through a war with all the French troops that they can hold on to. Actually, because of their alliances, you had Prussia, which was with Great Britain, going against, and they were the ones fighting, Prussia going against Austria and French troops. Austria was doing a lot of the work, though. And so the French were putting a lot of their effort down in India, way down in Asia, or over to North America. And so this is something to understand as well. they didn't have many troops to come back and reinforce. There's almost no chance they were going to take back Quebec City. So basically, all they were doing right now is hoping and praying that they were going to be able to find a way out of there. Now, this is again the French troops. The officers probably had another thing in mind. They're like, oh, no, we can do this. Yes, we can do this. We are French. We will take on. Now, it's funny because there's a stereotype that people have these days about the French, about being passive, being not very strong at all. Well, you have to remember, back a long time ago, the French soldiers were actually one of the top armies in the whole world. British, French, Spanish. Those were the top armies in the world at that point. And so at this time, you probably had some officers saying, there's a chance we could get it back. There is a chance we could get it back. Yes, we could take Quebec back. We will do that. Well, not likely. Because again, the British had a lot more soldiers. They had a lot more people coming from the colonies to defend those states. They had a lot more people and full access to supplies. Now that Quebec City was gone, there's no supplies coming down to Montreal. So all those people that are in Montreal are basically stuck. Now, they could think, hey, we could go through the Great Lakes. Well, you're going upstream into the Great Lakes. But as soon as you hit Niagara Falls, have you ever been to Niagara Falls? There's a reason why it's called the Falls. It's a fall. It's quite the drop. You cannot sail up there. So you could sail across. Let me see, right here. You can sail across Lake Ontario. So coming down the river until you get to the Niagara Falls. And then you have to pick up your boats, hike them in, and drop them again. Now, if you wanted to come into Lake Erie and have ships out here, you could do that. Have ships there. I don't know how the heck you're going to get ships. Boats, maybe. Okay, so you sail some boats over here. And then what? Well, you have to go through Detroit, which is actually French. It's a French fort at that time. Through all these other locks. Okay, come to Lake Huron. Come down Lake Michigan. And then somewhere around here you have the Mississippi River. Mississippi or Missouri? No. You have another river that actually feeds into the Mississippi. It is called what's the river? Rock River? No, I think there's another one. Anyways, but here's the thing. You are basically stuck if you're the French, and you know that you're stuck. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Now you're just trying to stay alive. So the French are saying, what do we have to do in order to stay alive? Well, you have to defend yourself. That's right. You have to defend yourself and try to keep your state from falling, your location from falling. So this is something that's very concerning to all the French. And so that's what they do. They basically fortify. Fortify, fortify, fortify. They don't want to lose Montreal. They want to fortify until they can think of something else to happen. So, let's see. Let's go through a picture for you guys to see. This is Montreal right here. Now, there is a lake and a river right here. You have the lakes right here. And you have the ocean right here. So there are 3 different ways that troops can get up to Montreal. Now, how do they do that? So there's 3 different fronts. So between April and May, the French win a single battle. At this point, they have the French forces in May 9th, 1760. The French forces begin to siege. Oh, sorry, that's right. They do actually try to do the coming back. They attack Quebec City, but they're unable to breach the defenses. Again, like I was saying, it's not going to happen. So they leave. The British are waiting for relief fleets. They're waiting for other people to come and to bring them supplies, to bring them more troops. The French try to take back, in May 9th, they try to take back the city of Quebec, but they can't do it. They lack the heavy artillery that's needed and the supplies. Again, all their supplies are cut off. They are all by themselves. So the British relief fleets arrive May 15th. Now remember, May 9th is when they were attacking the French. By the 15th, they're like, heck no, we're out of here. Let's go. And so it forces Lévis to abandon the siege and retreat back to Montreal. Okay, 1760. So it's 1 year after, well, it's like 6 months after the fall of Quebec. So the French fall back. The British get restocked. Troops, fresh troops, and supplies. So between May and June, they begin to plot, to plan. They're going to do a three-prong assault, is what they call it. A three-prong assault. Again, like I said, 3 different ways of getting to Montreal. The Great Lakes, the St. Lawrence River, and from Lake Champlain. Lake Champlain. Now, Lake Champlain is a small lake just south of Montreal, but it has a river coming up it. So the 3-prong approach. Let's go through it. You have General Jeffrey Amherst. Now remember, Amherst was actually the one that helped take over Fort Louisbourg, but he's now on the opposite side. He's been moved around. So you have Amherst, who was up here taking Louisbourg. He then floated down to New York, or somewhere around New York, gathered support, and started to hike around Lake Ontario. So he was coming up to Ontario and coming through Montreal. Now, I can't actually remember if he was going through Lake Ontario or around it. I think it was through it. Okay. So we'll actually come to that when we come to that. You have, sorry, let's go back to General Jeffrey Amherst, who is going through Montreal. Then you have Colonel William Haviland, who's moving through Lake Champlain, who's basically from down here, coming up to Montreal. So they'll probably park their ships or boats or marching. Actually, I think they were marching. Now, this is the group that had to go through swampy lands and had a hard time bringing up artillery to attack. Then you had General James Murray. Now, General James Murray marched from Quebec City up the St. Lawrence River, from here, Quebec, down into Montreal, or up, I should say, to Montreal. Remember, all the rivers of St. Lawrence River flows down towards the Atlantic Ocean. So they can't float up it. They can only go down it because there's rapids in between. So St. Lawrence is a great way of keeping track of where you are. So General Murray comes down from Montreal. September 1760. 1 year, almost exactly 1 year from when they took Quebec City. So it took them 1 year to do an entirely different battle. September 6th, Amherst. Their forces arrive, and the British forces surround the city, thanks to Amherst. September 7th, 1760, Haviland. So the next day, they arrive, and they further tighten the British encirclement of Montreal from the south. Amherst is from the north. You have Haviland from the south. But then, September 8th, they did this so well, they all arrived within a day of each other. Murray's forces reached Montreal, completing the siege, blocking off the river from any ships that might come up or down the river. It's at this point they're being attacked from 3 sides. There's nowhere to go. There's no retreat whatsoever. So they either die trying or they give up. Well, Governor Vaudreuil recognizes the situation. He says, there's nothing we can do. So he sends out a letter to Amherst. Full surrender. No fighting needed. The French formally surrender Montreal to the British. What does this do? Think about it. What does this do? Montreal is gone. Let's go back here. Montreal's gone. Quebec's gone. New France is now gone. There's nothing they can do. There are no fortifications up higher that they would have been able to take on the British. Quebec left first, Montreal. But this doesn't end it. There's one other location that has not been attacked, and that is Detroit. So I wanted to go over this with you, the casualties. So again, you can see the casualties of this and how many troops it took in order to get them to surrender. Okay, so bringing up my notes. The British have, from this account, I was just looking it up. Okay, I think mine said about 16,000. This account that I have on the web shows 11,000 regulars, 6,500 provisional, so secondary troops, and 700 Iroquois. Now, the Iroquois, remember, are against the Algonquin, and so the Algonquin are on the French side. So, of course, the Iroquois are contacted by the British and said, hey, you got to come up here, help us out with this. They said, sure, why not? So they come in with all that. The strength of the French in Montreal, they just attacked Quebec City. They only had 3,200 regulars and Marines. Now there's unknown when it comes to militia and unknown when it comes to the Native Americans that were actually helping out with the attack on Quebec. So I don't have those stats there. But what are the casualties? So casualties on the British side, very light. If anyone got hurt, it was probably tripping over themselves or a single gunshot. There wasn't much because there was no real battle. Now, the casualties on the French side are a little bit different. 2,200 surrender. 2,200. I thought you said they had 3,200. That's right, they did. They had 1,000 who were sick or missing. Missing. What happened? I mean, the place was completely surrounded. Did they merge in with the regular citizens, thinking they might be killed? Did they abandon beforehand? Don't know. But 1,000 is sick or missing. So I'm wondering how many were sick and how many were missing. 1,000 sick because, again, this is after the summer. They have other diseases that were coming through. The French were not very well supplied at this time, not Montreal, because Quebec fell a year before. There was no one bringing supplies at that point. The best chance for them to get supplies were actually from probably their Native American allies. And then with that Native American allies, what are they giving them? They're probably giving them guns or other things to protect them. So this was not a good fall. Here's the worst part about it. Like I said, New France falls. If New France falls, there's no real reason for the French to be there. Now, interesting enough, Amherst at one point wants to travel all the way down. Let me show you this. Oops, get my map back. Wants to travel all the way down from Quebec or from Montreal, travel down the St. Lawrence River, around Maine, around Nova Scotia, all the way down past Florida and over to St. Louis in Louisiana to attack the French there. He wanted them all out. But it's at this point when the talks of a treaty are starting. This is basically where the French basically surrender the Americas. They're done. They can't do anything. Now, they will actually send back their troops back to France. The British do not kill them. As a part of war, you allow those that survive to go back to their native country and live out their lives under a treaty that they will not attack you. So the troops go back And this is the same time, around the same time, that the 7 Years' War actually ended as well. Now, it takes a few years before the Treaty of Paris is signed. The treaty is signed that ends the 7 Years' War and the French and Indian War, because there's a lot of negotiation that has to happen. So, on Monday, we'll talk about Detroit. I think we talk about Detroit. Let me check my schedule. So Montreal. No, actually, we don't even talk about Detroit. Okay, so Detroit is the other city that's there, the other fort that's there. So let me bring you down into Detroit. This is Detroit. This is a French colony, or a French fortification. This one falls. But the thing is, if this one falls, all travel between the Great Lakes is seized by the British. So I will mention that next time. I'll go a little bit more into detail. I did not prepare that. But I'll go in a little bit more detail into what happened to Detroit. And that's really essential because, again, they're all about fur. Their fur trade is their biggest commodity from this area. They can't do wood. They can't do anything else because St. Lawrence River is taken. They have to float everything down the Mississippi River, down into Louisiana where they still own. But there's something that they do that's very sneaky indeed. So I will tell you about that. Probably not, maybe Wednesday. Either Wednesday or the next Monday after next week. But this is very sneaky of the French, or the French, and how they deal with Louisiana and the St. Louis. But we will get to that when we get there. Thank you so much for joining us on this great podcast, the Adventure Box Podcast, brought to you by Historical Conquest. Thank you so much. We will see you next week. I hope you have a great weekend. Take care. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.